Kingsland students, yesterday we talked about how charging capacity is necessary for weary Christians. I want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. If you haven't watched already, go back and watch it. But it's important for us to be with other believers, even if that be through technology. So interact with one another through our Bible reading plan. Interact with the Zoom on Saturdays at 4. And know that as weary Christians, many of you are experiencing things, your families are experiencing things that you've never thought imaginable. You've never thought possible. But know that Jesus is there and that we need Jesus. We got to preach Jesus to ourselves every day, realizing that our hope is in the cross and that we need Jesus to save us. We need Jesus to charge us, and we need Jesus as we seek to reach max capacity. Charging capacity, I want to continue to look at this passage. I want to talk about how charging capacity is necessary for working Christians. Even though we're weary, even though we're tired, we still have a mission, and that's to go and tell people about Jesus. And being a believer in Jesus is a huge task. The thought of telling Jesus to somebody, whether that be a stranger or a friend, is sometimes a scary thought. And often, I don't know about you, but it's easier to tell somebody I don't know about Jesus than to tell somebody I do know about Jesus. But we are called to be faithful. We are called to take the gospel to the ends of the earth and just be faithful to do that and leave the results up to God. I want to show you a little bit about Paul's efforts to take the gospel to the ends of the earth. We've seen that as he does this, he is needing support. I mean, just yesterday we saw that he met Priscilla and Aquila, and he found something in common with them as they were all tent makers, and he realized and he found support, and he realized, and as he was weary, that he needed other believers in his life. But today we're going to also see that opposition is going to come to those that are preaching Christ, right? I mean, people don't want to hear about it. And faithful Christians also are going to realize that we'll see fruit. It might not be the fruit that we expect, but God's going to produce fruit in people's lives that hear the gospel. We've just got to pray, we've just got to trust, and we've got to throw out gospel seeds, trusting that God's going to do amazing things. The text for today, Acts 18, 5-8, says this: When Silas and Timothy arrived from Macedonia, Paul was occupied with the word, testifying to the Jews that the Christ was Jesus. And when they opposed and reviled him, he shook out his garments and said to them, Your blood be on your own heads, I am innocent. From now on I will go to the Gentiles. And he left there and went to the house of a man named Titios Justus, a worshipper of God. His house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed in the Lord, and together with his entire household and many of the Corinthians, hearing Paul, believed and were baptized. I want to show you three things in this text very quickly about working Christians. The first is this: working Christians need support. Working Christians need support. When Silas and Timothy arrive from Macedonia, so we have Silas and we have Timothy, they're arriving from a place that is not Corinth, and they're coming here from Macedonia. And look at what's taking place here. Paul isn't just stopping what he's doing here, but Paul is occupied with the word, right? He's testifying to the Jews that Christ was Jesus. But we still have Timothy and we have Silas that are coming here from Macedonia, providing some financial support, but also these are people that Paul has become friends with, right? Friends in the ministry. People that he knows are praying for him and that they are there to support him with whatever he needs. You as a Christian need support, right? You need people, you need other believers in your life who are willing to help you, whether that be something that is financially as you go on a mission trip maybe, or you go on a trip to be able to share the gospel, or if you just need people praying for you. Kingsland students, know that I'm praying for you right now. I'm praying for your families. And I want to challenge you to pray for one another. I want to challenge you to support one another through Bible reading plan, through Zoom calls. Secondly, working Christians face opposition. You see, Paul is being faithful to share the gospel, right? He's preoccupied with the word, and he's testifying to the Jews that Jesus is the Christ, right? And Paul is doing his faithful duty to share the gospel. And when he does this, at the beginning of verse 6, we see that they oppose him and they revile him, right? I mean, something that is not fun, right? Does anybody actually like being opposed on something? No. But Paul is being faithful even though he knows that people are going to oppose him, that people are going to revile him. And his response is that he shook out his garments and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent. From now on I will go to the Gentiles." You see, Paul's just trying to be faithful, and he's experiencing opposition. This isn't just opposition that's taken place for this first time. I mean, he's experienced opposition from the Jews before, and we'll see that he's experiencing it now and that he'll experience it again. And he is just blunt with them and says, "Your blood be on your own heads. I'm innocent. I'm being faithful to tell you that Jesus is the Christ, that Jesus is the Messiah. I'm innocent. It's not my fault that you are rejecting. It's not my fault that you are opposing Jesus." And because you are opposing Jesus, we'll see that Paul comes back, but he says, "I'm going to go to the Gentiles. I'm going to go share the gospel with the Gentiles." And when he does this, we see that he's continuing to be faithful to the mission that he has to go and tell others about Jesus. And he moves on and he goes specifically to the Gentiles. And we see in verse 7, "And he left there. He went to the house of a man named Titius Justus, a worshiper of God, and his house was next door to the synagogue. Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed in the Lord," right? He believed in the Lord, and together his entire household believes in the Lord. And many of the Corinthians are hearing this gospel, this good news that Jesus is the Christ, that Jesus is the Messiah, and they are believing. They are trusting in Jesus for their salvation and their hope, and then they are baptized and they are commissioned to go and do exactly what Paul is doing and to be faithful and to share the gospel. You see, fruit wasn't necessarily bearing in that moment with the Jews, that Paul is trying to testify to them about Jesus. But he experiences and he sees gospel fruit from God with the Gentiles in Corinth. Crispus believes in the Lord, his entire household. Many other Corinthians hear this gospel, they believe this gospel, and then they give their life to the gospel and they follow after Christ, proclaiming to others that I am a follower of Jesus. As we are charging capacity, I want to encourage you to be charging your battery on the Word and realize that charging capacity is necessary for working Christians. If we're going to be faithful to share this gospel message, we've got to have a power source that is far greater than anything that we could ever imagine, anything that we could ever come up with. We need a power source that is able to change lives, and that only power source comes from God, comes from the Holy Spirit. So I pray this message finds you well. It's a little bit longer today, but I wanted to really drive this point forward that we must continue the work of taking the gospel to the ends of the earth. I want to challenge you. Go to one. Find somebody to share the gospel with. Challenge somebody with the word. If they don't want to accept the word, find somebody else to take the gospel with. If there's anything I could do with you, know I'm praying for you. Please let me know. Hope you have a great day.